What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So we're going into some more spoiler talk with Gotham Knight, but this is going to have some sort of a retrospective because I wanted to go back and look at some of the comic elements, and then we're going to talk about the game, and it is very different. First of all, Batman is the core focus of the, comics itself. And for those of you who know or may not know, the developers and their writers actually did consult with Scott Snyder when they were actually making and writing their story. So you could tell he gave his blessing on, the creative freedoms that they actually took. And he said he was excited to see what the developers were going to do with this. Here's the challenge that I have, and this is why I scored Gotham Knights an 8 out of 10 for the most part. I docked the whole point for its story being one of its much more weaker points. And the fact that the story was kind of one of its weaker points was not necessarily that they didn't set everything up well. It was the fact that they should have stuck with the Court of Owls as the main theme. Because if you look through the comics, they paid a lot of homage to the Court of Owls comics. Like here, where you see all of these pictures on the wall. You guys remember when you went through the labyrinth and you were going through those dazes, you got to see that if you died or whatever it is, you started all over again, and you saw pictures of yourself basically, when you actually got killed, and then you're back again. So they really did pay homage to that. In fact, they even went as far as representing some of the characters, or some elements or portrayal of the characters that we got to see in the game itself. And example of one of them is this lady. She's on a wheelchair, and I don't know who exactly she is. I've read the comics. I don't think there's much of a reference of her. Maybe I speed read through it and I didn't see it. But many of you already remember, if you've played it, you know that there was a representation of somebody like this, seeming like a senior member in, the owl nest or whatever it is. So these elements are very strong in the game itself, and I think they could have just stuck with that story element and kept things really cool. Sure, they decided that they were going to kill Bruce in the beginning of the game. I can, understand that. I can respect that. That's a very ballsy move. But in order for them to have gone to bring him back again and then have to go ahead and, melt him, because they used a whole different faction to not only, be the bosses or be the focus. It's a faction that is very, very, that has it really, really, that has something out for Bruce personally. And they tried to trick us, in a sense. That's one thing about these superhero games that are very funny. It's when the writers think that they can outsmart the community of gamers, because the community of gamers are usually very well versed with a lot of the literature. So it's easy to decipher a lot of things. If they had just stuck with the Court of Owls and then brought a very obvious, crescendo within the owls themselves, that would have probably been very acceptable. Example, making, say, you as the knight fight against a Talon at the end. At that point, it would not have necessarily been, the need to resurrect Batman again and then nuke him again. Now, this is not to say that the League of Assassins could not have been in the game, because they were already, pointed to be in the game. They could have been in the game, but it could have probably been like, I would say, some kind of a bait and switch that they could have used to say, oh, now you see the League of Assassins, and then everybody's expecting that Batman will probably get rezzed, and then no, he doesn't get rezzed, because, why would the Talons want him to be, rezzed? So that would have been a good conflict to have used in order for their writing to be, something that would be obvious, but at the end of the day, will still be enjoyable to a lot of fans. So I think the very big, challenge here that the developers faced was they did their best to stick with, a lot of the, origins of the comic anyways, not stick with, sorry. They did their best to represent elements from the comics, but their story probably got too complex for them. And so now having these two factions that are somewhat major factions was just kind of weird. And I think that really caught a lot of people off guard as to how the story could not stand, in its own right, especially with the Knights and then Batman being in the game and being dead and then being rezzed to get killed again. Those were some of the bigger challenges for the game. And this is why I didn't necessarily rank the game any higher than an 8 out of 10. Now, some people are probably thinking, oh, you ranked the game at an 8 out of 10. I did. And the reason is because I knew exactly what the game was going to be before it came out. And I think that's another really big challenge, too, is a lot of folk didn't necessarily, do a lot of research on the game. Some of us watched this game and played the trailers so many times that we're pretty much in a sense where we saw a lot of elements in the game. In fact, the footage that you're seeing, I specifically picked it out purposely because most of you remember that the Nightwing and Red Hood trailer was actually a small side mission that was actually shot on this specific rooftop. And so looking at those elements, and having to study the game and look at the literature, I want to say I hope that the developers have learned a lesson that sometimes it's okay to just come up with an obvious trope and not something that is too complicated. Now, as to the reason why they made Talia the main boss, to me, I'm still a little confused what her agenda was overall. I mean, it wasn't even her that caused Batman's first demise. It's crazy that you talk about Batman dying twice in the same movie, and so I wouldn't know why they would actually have to, bring her in the picture only for her to then be the cause of his, in quotes, second demise. And then now you have to deal with her. So the story element, and I can see the intention behind it, that the ideas were probably flowing and they wanted to take some risks and so on and so forth. But I got to say, man, there are lessons to be learned here in the storytelling and in the writing that in the future, when they're working with some of these other characters, if they're making a video game with a less popular character, then they can take a lot of these liberties. But these characters are so well, attached to Batman, who's a very well established character, that I can see how this has been, how this was a challenge for the game overall. But I'd love to hear your thoughts surrounding the dynamics between the Court of Owls and the League. Yes, they have some animosity. I think that kind of almost salvages the whole thing. But I want to hear how they actually ended it and how you see that overall. So thanks so much for watching the video. I really appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.